Yeah, so here we go again. Um, it's Saturday. The time is about 4:45 in the PM. Thus far, the only thing I've managed today is go to the uni screening for the elective course. I highly suspect my project will be on this channel shortly. Well, it already is, but it's not public, so you can't see it. Um, just waiting for the actors' blessings. I believe I may have broken some social norms with the feedback we done after, particularly by saying there was a lot to be learnt and a lot was learnt, and not implying that I could also learn and that I had also learned. Which, to be fair, would have been, for the sake of the communication, good to say. I didn't actually get to learn much new besides about these individuals. But it might have seemed a bit of a dickhead move, and it probably was a dickhead thing to say. So yeah, nah. Can't change it now that I've said it, and at the end of the day, it's only a dickhead move because of social norms. Just because I said, oh, there was a lot to be learnt, and you were willing to learn and you learnt. I should have said we instead of you. Make it an I message, you know. Not the Apple kind, but the I message. Uh, I have been managing to smoke in the low tens or teens of tobacco cigarettes a day, which is alright, I guess. Mm. I believe I'd call mind constipated as of late, uneasy internally. I mean, I'm not remotely close to internal peace in the slightest, but lately I feel I'm even uneasier. I don't know why it is, probably because I got this thing to write, this thesis, but that's something I'll have to worry about eventually. Mind constipation. Um, I don't really care for politics, but I'm going to talk about it anyways because I believe it's an issue. That having been said, I don't care for politics. With the recent European Parliament election, whatever, was surprising, the results, in my book at least. I mean, we all live in our own bubbles, but all of the former, well, most of the former east of Germany voted the majority for the right-wing popularist party. When I say right-wing, I do not mean conservative in the classical sense. I mean leaning towards National Socialism, which I wouldn't want for obvious reasons, and I believe anyone should not want for obvious reasons, for we all had history class in school. And that was more than a fifth of the votes in my neighbourhood. That's more than slightly concerning, but my neighbourhood weren't even representative. It's the majority party in like half of Germany, and the other half of Germany is not far behind. So that's kind of worrying, a bit scary, I guess I'd call it. And another party which is yet to be placed on the spectrum, but seems to also be leaning popularist on a lot of issues, and very aligned with the not so conservative but flushable kind of opinion. Then again, that they haven't been around long enough to know, but they also got a bit more than a fifth of the vote, which means almost half the votes went to those two parties, in both my neighbourhood and a lot of this country. Which, well, a lot of the country, they got maybe a third in total, but still, that's scary, man. Like, I honestly couldn't care less for politics, but come on, people, you have brains, go and vote. I mean, now it's too late, but nah. I mean, they got more than, those two parties combined got more than 2/5 of the vote in my neighbourhood, but less than half the people eligible to vote voted. That's just meh, you know. Because forfeiting your vote is not quite the same as voting for the parties you disagree with in concept, but it's certainly not voting against them, and that's not something I'm too fond of. I don't like politics, man. I don't like talking about politics. I guess some other politics, ones I'm more comfortable with, uni politics. Did the student representation for 2.5 years for my entire school. Turns out there was an open house day planned today for my uni, and they had not communicated it with neither the people booking out the rooms, we had booked out a room for the screening, nor with the student representatives, nor with anyone, which I find a bit odd. Then again, sadly, after 3 and a bit of a year at this uni, I cannot say it surprised me, which is a really sad statement to make, man. And at this point, I've reached a point where I'm telling people, don't worry, it's not going to change, because I'm disillusioned to some degree, and I believe it's just too big a corporate structure to have accountability and responsibility. Everyone says, oh, it's a higher department, and the highest department say, oh, it's not our thing, it's the parent company, you know. It's just, nah. I mean, it happens, but I don't gotta, man. You'd think it's really not that hard, you know. Got to turn on the ignition to put down the windows. It's a bit warm. Temperature outside is 23.5 degrees centigrade. There we go. Humidity is alright-ish, about 50% cloud coverage, rather sunny. And I haven't killed the camera. Oh no. There we go. I think it's quite problematic. I mean, new parties can exist, that's not a problem, and not knowing where they are on the spectrum is alright, but in the end of the day, they didn't have a programme for this election, and they still got a decent amount of seats. I believe 7% of our seats, of the country's seats, and that's a new party, man, without an election programme. I guess fairly concerning, man. We're all just in our own bubbles, and I was in the bubble of thinking, no, we all went to history class in school, and this being Germany, the era between, let's say, 1912 and 1945 is about half the curriculum by gut. So, you know, you'd think it's well enough studied in school, and everyone has to have gone to school and has to have had that course, to my understanding, in this country. And yet people vote that way. I mean, yeah, okay, people should vote for their own interests, but their own interests should not put them in a situation where they're screwing themselves over in the long term. I guess they should be able to have informed ideas. Admittedly, I didn't look at all the parties' election programs before I voted, but I know the party I voted for, and it's not like it really mattered because we're not one with enough to get a seat. Surprise. It's just really hard, man. Like, I don't get it. It's just a real disappointment, I guess. I'm disappointed in society at large. I mean, I know basically every other neighbour I walk over the way around my flat, every other neighbour I cross paths with. Oh, what's that? There we go. Is what I'd deem to be. I don't want to slander, but what I deem to be Nazi leaning, I guess, which is not good. And with 1 in 3 1 in 4 at most. It's generally agreed that it's Nazi leaning. When I'm saying Nazi, I mean it's short for National Socialist. It doesn't have to be the same party as from the 30s. In concept, it's the same thing. And people do history class, man. Yeah, I'm really noticing this mind constipation because I'm having a hard time focusing, even talking to myself. Today's drink of choice is Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Because it's the one of the 3 cans I have not drunk at the screening for uni. I've made a few pages of notes in the past few days for my writing, but I haven't actually written any. I did try hook up an external keyboard via that dongle to this phone, and it does work. So that's very pleasant. I'll be able to write on a proper keyboard instead of a flimsy butterfly mechanism. And the funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but I guess the interesting thing is, a few months back, we had big demonstrations before the most recent mayoral elections, I believe it was a city-state. Might have been unrelated, but against those Nazi-leaning parties. And they were well attended, those demonstrations. I mean, hell, about 10% of the people living in the city were at such a demonstration, I believe it was. Might be mistaken. Might be an order of magnitude off. It might have only been 1%, but even then, 1% willing to go on the street. I mean, come on, that's a lot. I myself would not be willing to go on a demonstration because I don't see the point in them. They inconvenience the parties doing them. They inconvenience others, and no one really care about the message besides having said the message, which then again is much like this here, which is my therapy replacement. So I guess one could argue this is my form of demonstrating for my causes. Today with the elective screening, because we had been misplaced due to the open house day, I used all my technical know-how to get the screen running in the other room we were in, because we'd been misplaced. And I actually managed to get it from can't even get an input to have an input and have audio. The only problem with the audio was we only had a woofer, we had no tweeter, which means there was no dialogue. I first thought that was my export, but turns out I didn't F up, so it was just the school tech that's fucked up. So by the time we figured this much out, the room we'd booked became available, which should have been available all along because we'd booked it. Yeah, mind constipated is a good term for this. Why do we have history lessons? I remember asking back in like 7th grade or so, and the answer was because we can learn from history and not repeat the same mistakes, people. Turns out other people did not ask their history teachers these reasons, or other history teachers were not able to give these reasons. Ooh, an urban fox. I'm just going to cut here. I'll be right. Will I? If it comes any closer, I'll cut the video and I'll take a picture for thumbnails, because why not, you know? I think this is very concerning, and I don't know what to do about it besides leave the country, which for the near future, even midterm future, is not an option for me due to living in a capitalistic world and having to be economically viable. I'll be right back. I'm back. I don't think I got a good enough picture of the fox for the thumbnail. We'll see. You'll see. You'll have seen, because you'll have clicked this. Thank you very much for doing so. Also, thank you very much for sticking around all the way till this. I mean, it's been quarter an hour. Thank you for spending the time with me. Wish I could say I'm spending it with you, but for some of you, I don't even know who you are, and I'm quite happy about that, I guess, because you could be anyone. You could even be the person at uni who did not communicate they have an open house day. Who knows? Second cigarette doing this. Bloody hell. I'm smoking too much. Is it my second? It might be my first, actually. My mind is not at ease. Mind constipated is a term I'm considering putting in the thumbnail for this video. Yeah, I'm far from at ease. I don't like it. It's like there's a permanent tension all over my body, and I haven't been sleeping that great either. I've been sleeping long enough every night, but it's taken me about 1.5 times the time it should to sleep 8 hours. So I've been taking 12 hours to sleep 8 hours. And looking at the data, they confirm this. The data from my sleeping graph, because I do my sleep tracking with a watch, is all like this. Awake, asleep, asleep, wake, wake, sleep. Oh, some deep sleep. Oh, awake, sleep, sleep, sleep. It's horrible. I don't like it. But I reckon I'll have that at least for the time I'm writing my thesis. After that, I might be able to sleep proper again. We'll see. It's really not easy that way, but hey. I'm quite happy with how the elective films turned out, just to wrap it around. All of them were presentable. And that was 7 films made in 7 weeks, so that's actually quite a good result, especially considering a lot of people hadn't handled a cable before. Saying that because I taught 3 separate people on 3 separate counts how to plug in a power cord into another power cord. Might just be they hadn't done it professionally, but odds are, had I not told them, no one would have during that course, so I'm glad I was able to. But I did really sound like a dickhead when I recommended that course never happen with only first and second semesters. Might have been a dickhead thing to say. Reality sometimes is not the most comfortable option, I guess. And that's a dickhead thing of me to say as well, I'll admit it. Probably should have reflected a bit more before speaking. Then again, that's what I do here. Hey. Tomorrow's film club I do plan to attend. Yes, last week I did not because I was Carlos. Not Carlos. Carlos. I believe tomorrow a focus group is meeting, which means I'll actually probably unlock again. And I'll take at least my notebook and some papers to read. Maybe I'll take iPad and keyboard as well and do some typing. We'll see. Next week, I got to really phone out to the Office of Student Grant / Loans, known as Barfik Amt, because they still owe me the best part of $1,000, and they haven't corresponded in regard to this. And I believe this is where it might be handy if we have to go to legal battle. I mean, I got legal insurance, so I will if I have to. That I have a compulsive thing of videoing myself putting envelopes in mailboxes. Because I can prove I put that envelope in that mailbox at 3:15 on the 27th of March. Deadline was end of March. 28th of March was a Friday, which means for officers it's Friday. I put it in their mailbox Thursday. They would have had it Friday. They cannot argue they didn't have it, but they did not respond, and it has been close to 3 months, 2.5 months. And when I called them, I was shouted at, which makes me really not want to call them again. I don't think dropping by theirs in person is an option because they don't have office hours. They only have phone hours, which is like Tuesday, Wednesday through Thursday. Tuesday through Thursday. Otherwise, it's redundant if I say Wednesday. 10 to 1 p.m. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So they have 9 hours of office phone hours a week, which seemed like a bad joke. I mean, I know people else have to get work done, but I am a full-time student, and where I'm not in my thesis semester, I might very well have lectures during all those periods, as most of their clientele will, you know. I'm really not looking forward to having to call them, but I gotta, because I can't afford not to. To be fair, if I had general inspection till like mid of next year, not end of this year, well, last third of this year, I guess, late Q3, I might very well forfeit the money, but I can't afford to at this time because I'd lose this here, and I can't afford that because I found out last weekend what happened then. Cost me 3 days in limbo, and a horrible experience with going 35 over the speed limit of 50. I still can't fathom that. I mean, yeah, going fast is fun, but there's roads for that. Either racetracks or autobahn. And on the autobahn, you can go bloody fast before you're starting to become questionably illegal. Depending on your vehicle, it might be the top speed that you are no longer legal. So if you've got a Bugatti Chiron, you can do 350 kph, no problem, you know. Assuming traffic allow for it. Which, worst case, Sunday mornings, hey, traffic will allow for it. No heavy good vehicles on the roads. Barely any passenger vehicles. Just go Sunday 4 in the AM. On the autobahn, you can go as fast as you can. Assuming you go somewhere where it's unrestricted, which is a lot of it, to be fair. I mean, even around here, not going to dox myself, but nah, this isn't doxing myself. Not too far from my place. Not too far is not saying much in this city. There is an unrestricted autobahn there. Which I did go on after having the service done on the car a while back. You might recall I mentioned I may be going. If you're still sticking around, odds are you might have seen that, who knows. Thank you for doing so, by the way. And the top speed of this car still is approximately 150 kph, according to GPS, so about 160 on the tachometer. Which is fine because the tyres I got are only rated for 170 kph, which I can't reach without downhill and a lot of wind from behind. And I don't think I'd want to reach much because it's not pleasant at those speeds. I mean, yeah, it's a long wheelbase, but you are sitting right above the wheelbase. The wheelbase is where my legs are, is where the front axle's sitting, you know. Front axles. It's not one central, but still. That's just, you know, crazy. I have yet to crimp in the connector for the camera, which is why I had to unplug it earlier. I really don't like the unplugging, first off because eventually the power cable's going to wear with plugging, unplugging. And secondly because you run risk of not plugging it back in. Obviously you do the same with switching, but turn the switch on if it's on 0 and you have a 0 facing you on a switch. Significantly easier than looking up at the ceiling, oh, the connector behind the mirror is not in, and putting that in, you know. Is the idea of safety through systems, which is how you can resolve so many things in my eyes. I mean, as this is already political anyways, and we're far enough in that people might very well not hear it. With, for example, the Chinas. I am saying the Chinas because, in my opinion, they're both legitimate countries. They both would disagree, but I frankly don't care. They both act as an own country. And admittedly, the Republic of China's government, in exile, still lays claim to mainland China, but the fact is they are in exile. Also known as Taiwan. So, and they have been there for long enough that I'd say it's fair enough to call Taiwan a separate country. And as we're already opening the big Pandora's box of political stuff, South China Sea. yes, it is full of claims. I believe most of them are right. Problem is they overlap. So easiest solution is to just say, none of you guys gets it. We'll make it a separate entity, a company, so to say, that acts in the interest of the environment or of the ocean at large. Yes, you can get permits to fish it, but you have to have a sustainability plan and not leak oil. And if you leak oil, you have to contain it. Things like that, you know. Then again, odds are the PRC might not like that too much. Basically making the South Chinese Sea a demilitarized zone, you know. Don't think that worked for other reasons, but still, one can live in one's utopian, idealistic world. Detached from reality. The best kind of reality. I just don't get why people can't just work together. I mean, everyone have shared interests in mind. We all just want to live a comfy, happy life. There is nothing saying you can't live a comfy, happy life if others are doing so, you know. And if that is your concern, that others are living a happy life and you can't be happy because of that, I'm sorry to tell you, but there's something wrong with you. You might want to get that looked into. Just saying. This is a loaded episode, man. I've been told in the past, some of these things I say by a person I know who watches these are enough reasons for cancellation. I bet you this one is loaded with that stuff. Odds are I'm going to upload it anyways, even though in the past I have talked to myself and not uploaded it. But that's the point of it in the end of the day. And if you want to cancel me, go ahead. I mean, I don't think I have enough to be cancelled, so. And I don't think anyone having watched remotely any of this catalogue of my solo therapy would come to think that I am worth cancelling. That the spirit of the words I say reflects their literal meaning. I don't know. You got to make your own picture about that, you know. I recently lost some respect for an artist just because they were not fond of being called out for using generative AI for their images and not claiming so. It was not concept, it was basically a generated image. I had decent respect for them before. I still have some respect for them, of course. First off, fellow human being. Second off, they're still a successful artist, but I can't look upon their art as clean, as pure as I could have before. Because being called out for one thing is another thing, but then reacting like a child is fucking horrendous, man. Grow up. Then again, if you're hearing this, odds are you may have grown up. Who knows? That's one thing I've found a bit funny, is me, a person with only a quarter century of time on their back, telling people, you look grown up, act like it. I mean, I've done that on several counts. Recently, I've started doing it in traffic. If I see people drive like shit and I get the chance to get next to them at the traffic light or so, I'll tell them. Had a fellow on their phone the other day, didn't even get into gear, was going slower than walking speed, being an obstacle to traffic. So I told them at the next traffic light, "Oi, grow up. You look like you're grown up. Act like it." Which might be a bit confrontational to be effective, but never know, you know. Just today, I told the passenger and the driver of a car, in future, please use your indicators, man. First I said your Fahrtrichtungswechselanzeiger, which is the technically correct term for indicators in German. And then I had to rephrase as blinkers because they didn't know what I was talking about. But they actually apologised and said they'll try to do so in future, because it was just, a residential area. Car stood in the middle of the road, no nothing. Then it go into reverse. I think, might go past the left of it. There's no oncoming traffic. Then it starts going left. I'm happy I didn't move, which is, according to the rules of the road, the right thing, because it's an ambiguous traffic situation, and in those cases you should drive appropriately, which I certainly did, because I didn't ram them, they didn't ram me. But they apologised, and I hope so in future they'll actually try to do so. I don't think that was de-escalation on their end, because I wasn't escalating anything. But a lot of the time, with just telling people, you look grown up, act like it, I just mic drop, and leave. Because at the end of the day, if they're in this position, me telling them the words will have all the effect it will, even if they cannot respond. So me listening to them articulate some excuse or so is a waste of both their and my time. Funny how that works, I guess. There is quite a breeze going on, and I got the feeling later we might have a thunderstorm, which I would actually be looking forward to, I guess. Although I won't be very productive today, just because I'm constipated. I am time and time again very happy I have the cameras in the car. Earlier I had a pedestrian smack the back of the car for some reason. I believe they didn't understand that they did not have the right of way, and they thought I'd cut them off. Surprise, they did not have the right of way. I went and I was just going straight, and they wanted to walk right out in front of me, and I said no, and I went instead, without endangering anyone, just by putting a wall in their way. But then they smacked the back of my car. Good news is I ain't got a dent or a scratch or nothing, and if I did, I'd have their face on camera. Because no, it's not continuously storing the recordings, but it is continuously recording, and the moment I push a button, it's saved, which is legal these days, luckily. In the idea of hopes and dreams, I have recently looked into what it would take for me to go to the fatherland, not quite the United Kingdom, to England next year, and how I'd approach getting there from here, because I have never from here. No one I know has from here, besides people who fly. And there's several options. One is drive across to like Rotterdam or so, take a ferry. But those ferries go for like half a day, and they cost an arm and a leg, to be fair, even if you book them now. Which means I'd very well consider the option of going across to the home turf, which would be an extra detour south, just to drive back north again. But that way I could make it in 2-day trips instead of a very long 1-day trip, which might end up irresponsible. And I'd save a lot of money on the ferry, though I'd burn some of it on diesel. That's something I think I'd manage, though. Before I can do that, I've still got to apply for a passport. Because I do have an ID card, but it's not Schengen, so I need a passport. Reason I came to think of this is a good friend of mine who used to live in the city have recently moved east of here, so toward the UK. I drive fairly close by them. If I were to drive via Rotterdam, I'm trying to stay in touch and all, because I care for them, I guess. Yeah, they've just moved away. They didn't say so ahead of time, but apparently they had to, and that's just how it is. Being grown up and all. I hope they'll manage, because I believe their significant other is important for their mental health, and for this time I believe they are spatially separated from their significant other for the moment, which I hope works out for them, just because I care for them. I actually do, which I guess qualifies them for the pre-friendship term inflation term of a good friend. Wow, that's something. Pre-friendship term inflation good friend, because pre-friendship term inflation, just friend was a few dozen people. Good friends were but a handful, and they qualify for that. Funny how that works. Anyways, thank you very much for sticking around and watching this far. If you're still here, nice stuff. If you've got any comments, feel free to leave them down in the doobly-doo. You don't got to contact me privately if you do got my private contact details, and if you do not got my private contact details, please do not contact me privately, to state the obvious. But I'm always open for public discourse. I don't mind. I believe transparency is key. So down in the doobly-doo, even though this might have been political. I hope you also are transparent and open for communication. I'll see you around. Stay safe. Cheerio.